Hi, welcome back to another edition of Direct Edition. My name's Dave from the West Coast Davengers. Today I'm presenting you my epic interview with comics legend Mike Allred. A veteran of over 30 years in comics, created Madman and the Atomics, and worked on legendary runs like Silver Surfer and Batman 66 and his new book, Batman Dark Age, as well as a host of other things. But Mike is more than just a comic creator. He's one of the most lovable guys in the comic industry. He's a huge nerd and a huge geek, and just somebody that is a pleasure to talk to and to listen to talk. He's a huge music fan. He illustrated a David Bowie biography a couple years back. He did the cover for the Weird Al comic that came out through Z2. He is a musician, and he is married to his longtime comics partner, Laura Allred. She colors all of his work, and they make a great comic book family. You're going to love this interview if you love all things pop culture and comics. My first experience with Allred, I think it might have been one of the Star Wars Galaxy, the Topps Galaxy card sets, but probably around that time also just seeing Madman and during the Legend imprint of Dark Horse. But it's just somebody that I was always aware of. When I met him at OAX, we struck up a conversation, me, him, and Laura, just about all things Star Wars, but mostly Jar Jar Binks. Misa sorry. You know, I just knew immediately, I'm like, I want to have conversations with him. And I do not think this is going to be the last one. Actually, I know it won't. We're already talking about doing another one when Dark Age wraps up. But he does currently have a great book out on the stands, and that is Batman Dark Age. And it is a part of the universe that him and Mark Russell created with Superman Space Age. So check that out. And I'm recording this a couple of days before DavengerCon, so that's why we're doing double ups on the interviews. I just don't have the bandwidth to record something new right now, so I'll record a long episode after DavengerCon is over. But you'll be hearing this the day after DavengerCon, so thank you for attending. And if for some reason you know my podcast, but you don't know my channel, that is West Coast Avengers on YouTube. So without further ado, I'm going to bring you a almost 2-hour interview with Mike Allred. Yeehaw! How you doing?
Great. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am. I mean, it's sunny. We were just commiserating about how we love the Northwest, and if it starts raining, we're gonna love it just the same, right?
Yeah.
Are you what? Let's see, what do we got back there? We got R2 and C3PO, so we got the opening of New Hope just right over your shoulder there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
And,
you got Darth
with his helmet sliced open, and is behind him, but you can't see him. Oh, and then the meditation chamber.
That's right. That's right. We never got to see enough of it. We got to see just a little bit, but we never got to see enough of it in Empire. And then I guess it was in Rogue One as well, right? I think there was a scene where he was in the meditation chamber. Maybe I'm imagining that.
Yeah, that seems to ring it. Is it?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's all one big piece of beautiful pie as far as I'm concerned. But
that is very true.
But yeah, my studio is just packed with all my pop culture favorites, and Star Wars definitely takes more room than anything else.
Well, it's the biggest. I mean, right? We're talking, we're hitting 50 years of Star Wars in 3 years.
Oh, it's still my greatest movie going experience ever. I knew nothing about it going in, went in late, got my dad to let us stay and watch it again. And so we were, in a camper going to relatives, and knew nothing about what was going on in the world. And it must have just started because there were no lines. Wow. And this was like downtown Salt Lake City, the Center Theater, one of those big classic houses with balconies and ornate design and stuff. And we had no problem getting a seat or staying and watching it again.
Wow. Yeah, I'm not old enough to have seen New Hope in the theater. I was born in 79, but I did see Jedi in the theater. And, at 4 years old, 5 years old, from then on, I was taken by it. It was my entire childhood. It was even pieces of my teens, and it's, like you, it's been with me ever since. It never leaves you, no matter what, movies come out and TV come out. Like, I'm always going to love pieces of Star Wars, or, all of it.
Yeah, it really opened my brain, and it made me a movie fan, a sci-fi fan. I mean, everything that I'd been exposed to up to then, I was already, very genre oriented, mostly because of comic books, but Star Wars was just a magical experience. And to kind of, I see we have Laura's name down here.
Yeah.
But she had the same experience in Anaheim, California, walking in late. We both walked in, and the first thing we saw was 3PO walking past the crate dragon skeleton on the dune.
Yeah.
We both came in late, and that's the first image we ever saw.
Wow.
But it's like that. Like Laura and I, we're definitely soulmates, because even our photographs, when you see us, photograph, your parents take you to Sears or whatever, and
and you do the family photo. Yeah.
Each year we're like posed the same. It's crazy. Like we had our pictures taken right after that.
And that's a beautiful thing, Yeah, I mean, you guys have been together for how long? 30.
We met October 22nd, 1980, and we've been together since the moment we met. It was the most magic. When we tell people how we met, people think it's BS, but it really happened, and we've truly been inseparable ever since. But
that's amazing. That's amazing.
There have been times we've had to be apart, but I always like the story of Paul McCartney and Linda McCartney. Mm-hmm. They were only ever apart 11 days for their entire marriage, and it was when he got busted for pot in Tokyo.
Oh, those were the days. Wow.
But isn't that crazy? They were able to, of course, being in his situation, of course, he could be with and do whatever he wanted, but he chose to be with her, and beautiful.
He's always struck me as a great guy, and I only got to see him live once, but man, even it was like 8 years ago, he still put on a 3-hour show, and it's just so much energy and so much positivity in that room.
Well, Hard Day's Night is my absolute favorite movie, and Star Wars would be my second favorite movie. But Hard Day's Night, I can watch that on a loop, and it never fails to make me happy. It's just one big chunk of joy, and what a miraculous, beautifully made film that captures Beatlemania right before it kicked off in America. It's such a magical, amazing film. So both those, Hard Day's Night, Star Wars, pure magic.
Yeah. I think, and it's funny because when you think about it, those are two great things that have, are still extremely relevant, will never lose relevancy. I grew up on both of those things. My parents both loved the Beatles, and I was raised on a steady diet of the Beatles and the Doors and the Moody Blues and stuff like that. But Sgt. Pepper's, to me, like, you could put that on and I could listen to it for a full straight day and I would not get sick of it.
Yeah, never. No, I endlessly. That, and Bowie's like that for me. Bowie, Beatles, I've never, ever gotten tired of listening to their work. It's endlessly inspiring and joyful and moving and
just creative forces. It's funny you mention it, and I'll see if you can guess it. Just in prep for this, I listen to a lot of music, but today I turned on what I consider to be the single greatest live performance of a song ever, and I want to see if you can guess what it is, because it's pretty iconic, and I think you might know. But what do you think it is? And you just named one half of the people that are in that performance.
Dung, 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 dung. Go ahead.
Bowie, Annie Lennox, Under Pressure from the Freddie Mercury benefit concert in '92. I think that is the single greatest performance of a song ever live.
And again, talk about moving. I actually just saw that. I have my DVR set to record certain things, so anytime Bowie comes on, and the tribute concert for Freddie came on. Yeah, no, it's glorious.
Like, Annie Lennox just knocked it. I mean, Bowie's going to knock it out of the park, but Annie Lennox was on another planet.
Yeah.
So
both just nailing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I always get emotional when I watch that performance. So, well, let's jump into comics, because we are going to come back to music. What was your first experience reading comics? Like, I know there's a little story behind it. Something with a table and your brother Lee.
I hope people don't get sick of hearing this, but the quick version is, my earliest memory is waking up in a hospital and blanketed on the bed were a bunch of comic books.
Mm-hmm.
My brother had knocked me off of a card table. I guess it was like a Western. He wanted me to dance faster, so he shook the table, and I ended up on my head. But the table was blanketed. Oh, he actually could remember some of the books that were there.
Yeah.
And one was a Superman book, which I just had. Anyway, but that was, and because of him, my brother Lee, comic books were always in my life, always.
Mm-hmm.
And he always steered my tastes whenever it was up, when I was left to my own choices. If we're on a trip or something, we'd always go by a market or drugstore and, okay, kids, here's $1. You can buy a whole bunch of comic books for that.
Sure.
I kind of leaned into the Harvey stuff, hot stuff, Casper, that kind of thing.
Richie Rich, yeah.
Which has some terrific cartooning in it, great brush work and stuff, but it's a quick meal. And so I would get through my books and learned how to read with comics. I wanted to know what these characters were saying. So I could read very well before I ever got into school. But when I was done with mine, Lee had this really rich stuff, the Fantastic Four and Legion of Superheroes. And so I would always, please let me, can I read yours now? He always had the best stack. And it really did shape my tastes. It eventually turned me on to Barry Windsor-Smith.
Right.
And, anyway, it was.
Well, yeah, I've heard you speak about Barry Windsor, and obviously, Kirby as being a huge influence in your Surfer Run, and your Fantastic Four stuff is a huge reflection of that. It's interesting because I've interviewed Bob Hall and I talked to George Pratt at OAX, and they both had similar stories of being in the hospital as a kid, and then, parents bringing them stacks of comics. And, it's interesting because I had a similar incident with my brother where I broke my wrist because he lifted me up on his shoulders, lost balance and all that stuff. Older brothers like to hurt their younger brothers. But I didn't have a stay in the hospital. So I definitely got some comics out of that, though. I broke a wrist. But I think I got a Transformers toy out of it too. But it is interesting how that's a story that kind of a through line through a lot of creators, because obviously if you're in a hospital now, you just got your cell phone, no parent's going to bring their kid comics because you can't find comics anywhere anymore except comic stores.
Yeah.
Do you remember, now I know you probably didn't go, do you remember the first comic store you went to? It probably would have been when you were a little bit older, right?
It was Emerald City Comics in Eugene.
Okay.
And it was actually the first comic book store in Oregon ever. The building it was in is next to the University of Oregon and was just torn down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's heartbreaking. Most buildings in this area now are being turned into big apartment buildings, for students. But no, it was Emerald City. And prior to that, in fact, speaking of Barry Windsor-Smith, okay, here's the story I've told way too many times, but it's crucial to my development.
Sure.
Yeah. I was sent to live with my mom for high school. She married a rancher up past Park City in Utah. And when I got out of high school, I then went back to stay with my dad in Roseburg, Oregon, which is about an hour south of here. And he had, I guess because he wasn't eager to have me sitting there all summer, he got me a job as a lifeguard at a summer camp. and it was in 2 sections. So the first section did the whole thing. Oh, and by the way, for the entire summer, I was paid a whopping $500.
All right.
So the first session ended, went back, and this was a camp out in the sticks towards the coast. Come back to Eugene, the big city, and there's a used bookstore. It was a book fair, and in the back was a box filled with Barry Windsor's Conan 1 through 24.
Right, right.
The greatest bursts of talent,
creativity. Yeah.
Prior to this, Barry was very much a Kirby wannabe. But with Conan, with issue number 1 to issue 24, I've never seen this.
Yeah, he grows into himself.
Oh, and beyond.
Yeah.
And then he did Red Nails after that, which is my favorite. But I was already a fan because Lee always got Foom. He was like, it was a Marvel focusing, and Lee got the Marvel calendars, and there was this super cool Barry Windsor-Smith Conan calendar piece where he's just sword in hand running down these pavers with grass growing through the cracks and whatnot. And I was like, oh, that's cool looking. And here in one place, now keep in mind, I've never seen a comic book store before. So to see all of them right there, because if you missed a comic, tough, you know, you would try to, if you're collecting comics, you would try to get to the drugstore and get them. But if you missed it, too bad. So here these were, but 24 comic books. And this is 1980. Yeah, the summer of 1980. And, there they were, but they were $250. And so I took off of my summer salary, bought these comics. And then towards the end of the summer, there were some fees that I needed to pay for college. And Dad was like, well, you got that covered. And I was like, well, actually,
nope.
Oh, he was so mad. And I always use this analogy. It was Jack and the Beanstalk, because Jack bought these, you know, traded the cow for these magic beans. I traded my cow for these 24 comic books. And for the rest of my dad's life, I did everything I could to prove to him that that wasn't money ill spent. And I eventually got a comic book spinner rack. And that's where those Barry Windsor-Smith Conans are. That's my magic beanstalk.
Yeah. And I think you did okay with buying those books and where you are now.
Well, it's funny because that was the stuff that got me to first really try to do a professional comic book full size, and tried to find what the correct tools were and whatnot. But when I mentioned Barry Windsor-Smith as a major influence, when I mention all my other influences like the Hernandez brothers or Kirby or Toad, people go, oh, yeah, I can see that. But nobody tends to see the Barry Windsor-Smith stuff in there. But if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing comics.
Well, and that's the biggest influence.
I'm taking Frank to the grocery store. I'll be back later.
Okay, love you. You can poke your head in here. Your name's on the title.
Hi, Laura. Yeah, but BWS is, I mean, like when you talk about it that way, it is your biggest influence. And it's funny because, you know, I was introduced to his work in the 90s with Weapon X. And at the time, like I knew what I was looking at was pretty cool, but I didn't realize who I was looking at or what I was truly looking at. And now at, you know, where I am now in my life, it's like, oh, that really did open my eyes. And so much so that Monsters, which came out, like 2.5 years ago, that's one of the best books I have ever read, period. It doesn't matter if it's a comic book or a prose. It is so good. It is haunting, but it is so good.
Yeah, and once you think, oh, we'll never see anything again, all of a sudden, bam, you get this nice big thick book. It was like David Lynch with the third season of Twin Peaks. Yeah. What? Not only did you get new David Lynch, but he directed every single hour.
I know, and it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it was such a treat. But yeah, you never count anybody out. And hopefully those creative forces are just constantly churning, and I celebrate it whenever we get stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like we're lucky that we get to see some people, have a not a rejuvenation in their career, but go away for a bit and then come out with a magnus opus or something like that. We can only hope that every one of our favorite artists, filmmakers, or bands could do that. Uh, so before we get to your like beginning in the comics, what, like, were you an artist as a kid, and like previous to like Barry Windsor-Smith in comics, did you have any other artistic influences, in the physical art sense?
Oh, I always blank. There's so many. Well, Lee and I grew up on Andrew Loomis. My dad was a frustrated artist, and he had all the Andrew Loomis books, figure drawing for all it's worth, and fun with a pencil, stuff like that. So it was, in fact, I would strongly recommend those books to anybody that wants to enhance their drawing or learn how to draw. Just one of the best instructors that ever lived, and his work is so beautiful. Kirby was always there. Oh my gosh, Steranko.
Yeah.
I should look at my shelves. Roy Crane. Roy Crane is huge for me. He's in fact, you can probably see a lot of Roy Crane in my stuff, because he influenced Toth, and oh man, his stuff is addictive. If anybody, a call out to somebody to please republish the Wash Tubs and Captain Easy stuff. It's so hard to find. Fantagraphics did these beautiful Captain Easy Sunday Funnies collections. Those are just beautiful treasures. There's great Buzz Sawyer collections. But when you start reading Wash Tubs and Captain Easy, it's very raw at first, but man, you can't stop. The adventure just flows, and the romance flows, and over time he becomes a master as well. He's very much a master to begin with, but the way his work just became this perfect thing. He's one of my very favorite artists and a huge influence. I actually have a bunch of art books, like Norman Saunders, a lot of movie poster artists.
Right.
Oh, McGinnis, who did most of the James Bond movie posters.
Yeah, those are some great posters.
Yeah. I got Brendan McCarthy right here, Mark Schultz, Matt Wagner, who I wouldn't be here without Matt. He's one of Darwin Cook, one of the best friends I ever had. Mazzucchelli, I love everything he does. Everything from the realistic stuff to the very abstract stuff.
Yeah, that year one artist edition's coming out this year. That's gonna
July 16th. I can't wait.
Yeah, that's gonna be great.
Yeah, I mean, I have it's one of those books that you put out a new collection, I get it. I have multiple versions of it. So the original books, the absolute editions, etc. And so now to be just one step away from owning all of the original art, yay, Scott Dunbier, man.
Dunbier is doing the work. He's doing the work for sure. So you became a journalist, right? And what led you to that? Actually, my brother went to school for journalism. What led you to want to be a journalist for a period of your life?
Well, in college, I was an art major, and talking with the instructors and just trying to get a sense of. So anyway, I got scared. Like, how am I going to make a living as an artist? I'm too introverted to be an instructor. So anyway, my childhood friend who lived across the street from us growing up, his father owned the local radio stations, the AM and FM radio station. And the college had a radio station. And so I started taking that course, was a DJ for the college radio station. And then the next summer got a job at my friend's radio station. And then I thought, I like this. I play all my favorite music. There was I ended up getting the midday slot on the AM station, which was mostly top 40, leaning into rock. But then the FM station on Saturday nights, midnight to 6 a.m. Was night rock, and I got that shift. And in the wee hours, I could play anything I wanted.
Wow.
And at one time I played the flip side. I forget what 45. We played records. Sure. Most stations are totally automated now. But this was when you had live DJs and requests.
And you'd hear the pops and the cracks of the records on the radio.
And you would, if you had to go to the bathroom for any length of time, you'd whip out In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida or Freebird. You knew how long every song was, and how much time you needed. But one time I played the flip side of a David Bowie single. And I can't remember what the main single was, but the flip side was Amsterdam. Okay. Which is really raw. It talks about a guy whose teeth is rotting, eating fish heads and tails and whatnot. And I played that, and the station manager, the owner, Tom, my friend's father, called me up and said, "Never play that again." And I was like, "Oh," and to think that he was listening, first of all, just panicked me because I didn't think he was. And so I became very self-conscious at that point. But the next day, his son, Eric, the program director, went in and they went through every record and put black stickers on anything they thought I might want to play. That was, too edgy, too out there, too bizarre. Because I was always looking for deep cuts.
Yeah.
Play stuff that I loved that I thought the general public needed to be exposed to. I was that guy. And but then after that you pull out a record, it had a black sticker. Nope, can't play that.
I love that though, because that shows I know what that's like to be at that kind of level of a music fan where you want to share the tracks that people don't know. I would used to throw parties in my 20s, and I would make mixes on the iPod when the iPod was new, and I'd put on like a Radiohead B-side, and everybody just kind of looks at me when it came on. I'm like, what? I really wanted to hear this song.
Yeah. One of the funny things that would happen back then is people would request songs, and they would ask you to give a long intro so they could set the recorder. Record the song, and they'd be like, and can you stop talking before you and then play? And I was like, no. We did something called it was called Walking the Ramp, where you'd just be talking over it, and then try to stop right before the vocals of the song.
That's what that's called.
Yeah, we would all impress each other, my fellow DJs, about how good we were walking the ramp, and knowing exactly what to say and how much time you had to say it, and then right as you're done talking, you crank it, and then or a really nice punchy part of the song kicks in. But those were good times. But it was then that Laura was pregnant, and a recruiter came in for the Air Force, and I became friends with him, and he was like, you can do this for AFRTS, and you can see the world and free babies, free healthcare and all this stuff. And it was like, because we were concerned, and a local broadcaster doesn't make a lot of money. Right. But so I was like, okay, cool. And I got sent to broadcasting school for television, and I excelled there to where I was sent to teach television production at the Air Force Academy. And then from there, I was sent overseas to be a TV reporter for AFRTS and AFN. And so if you're in Europe, that's anybody speaking English or interested in English language culture, no matter what country you're in, you're going to tune in to AFN or AFRTS, because that's where people overseas would see The Simpsons back then, for instance. So you were actually really popular over there bringing this American culture to Europe. And I was sent all over Europe covering human interest stories. And the last story I did was covering the fall of the Berlin Wall.
Right.
And then January of 1990, my hobby became a full-time career. Came back to the States, and et cetera, et cetera.
And that's where this comes in, right? Dead Air.
First thing I ever did, yeah, and it would have been the first and last thing. In fact, like I wanted to do that and show my dad, look what I did.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And but I was never satisfied, so I just kept doing more and more and more. And all of a sudden, I got a job that was paying well enough to roll the dice, and so we came back to the States. And then my dad saw the progression in my career, and it was a beautiful day when he like put his arm around me and said, I'm really proud of you, son.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I mean, you know, that's the power of hard work.
Bucks, man. $250.
Did you ever get a chance to thank Barry Windsor-Smith for starting on that path? Yeah.
Bob Schreck, who was my editor at Dark Horse, who's legendary in the comic book biz. We were at a comic show, and Barry stepped into an elevator that Schreck and I were in, and Schreck knows everybody, and just, Barry, you got to meet Mike, and and it was like, got to tell you this real fast.
I mean, that's great. That's amazing.
And his lovely British accent, he said something like, "Well, you could have done better to somebody to inspire you." But and then of course he did a Madman piece for me. I've got over 200 artists doing Madman for me. And he's one of them.
So and that's one of the things I was fascinated by, because I had the card set, the book over my shoulder here has all the pinups in it.
Most of them.
Yeah.
All of them up to that point.
How did you pull it off? Like, you were, I mean, no disrespect to younger Mike Allred, but you were just a young comic book creator who had this property, and everybody was like, okay, I know the story that you wanted Will Eisner to do one, you never got one, but I mean, everybody. How did that start?
It was amazing. Richard Sola, this wonderful cartoonist, most of his stuff is published by Fantagraphics. He passed away a few years ago. Just the sweetest man, and the early shows we would go to, we tended to end up hanging out with him a lot. And somebody came up with the idea. Well, or I probably just asked him, "Hey, would you draw Madman in your style?"
Yeah.
And not only did he, but he did this beautiful painting. It's a beautiful watercolor. It's primo Richard Sola. And that became the back cover to Madman Adventures #1, I think. Okay. And so and then when that happened, Laura and I went to every single show. And just as we made friends, we would just be, "Hey, like Richard did this, would you do one?" And early on, people, we would trade each other. Sure. Or sometimes they would just do it for fun. And then by the time Madman got to Dark Horse, Bob Schreck got the idea to do because the plan was every back cover would be a different artist. Yeah. And he was like, "Well, why don't we make a card set?" Because cards were really big that then, the box cards. So we ended up doing 250 artist card sets. And then Dark Horse paid a fee. So that made it even easier. But when, like, Scott Dunbier, the hero, gave me Alex Toth's address and phone number. Sorry. But it was like, "Oh, he'd love your stuff. You should show it to him." And so I sent him some of my stuff and waited a while, called up. He answered the phone. And I'm like, "Oh, hey, I sent you some work." He's like, "Oh yeah, it's terrific stuff." And I said, "Well, we're doing, if you could please do a piece for me, it'll be on the back cover and it'll also be a card." And he was like, "Oh, well, I I already did something for you. It's in the mail. You should get it any day now. And I was like, you're kidding. That's great. Thank you. And he was like, oh, but you want a cover and a card? I was like, yeah. He's like, okay, I'll do another one too. So they did another piece for a back cover. And he was the catalyst that anytime I approached anybody at that point, all I had to do was say, Alex Toth did
Toth
one.
did one, yeah.
And nobody ever said no. Actually, one person said no, Steve Ditko.
Wow. Well, that's not a surprise. I mean, that,
Yeah.
he
got a really nice rejection letter. And back then,
that's cool.
Phone numbers were so people would have their phone numbers.
Sure.
And so, and it was the exact opposite situation with Ditko, where I sent him work and then called him. And he was like, I wouldn't get anything from this. I was like, oh, you wouldn't, maybe just for fun. He says, no, I only do my stuff.
Yeah.
Or words to that effect. And then, and I wrote you a letter, and I was like, okay. And so the letter was just like maybe 2 sentences, maybe one. I need to find it. I'll frame it. But it's like, it said something like, I have no interest in this whatsoever.
I mean, when you think about the history of people's interactions with Ditko, this is just another piece of that. I mean, it's very similar to your story about how it ended with Toth. It's just, I mean, cartoonists, look, a lot more cartoonists than I have ever met. A weird bunch. People that don't get a lot of social interaction. And that's why, like, when I met you and Laura and Jimmy and Amanda, you guys are kind of examples of really social people that would never, ever reject somebody like that.
I don't understand that. Everyone I've ever met is awesome and kind and excited. The one thing we all have in common is we love comic books.
Right.
And I don't understand why anybody would ever be rude or mean to somebody.
Yeah.
And not that Ditko was rude to me. He was just very terse and to the point.
Yeah. Matter of fact.
And he answered his phone and he wrote me a letter. He paid for a stamp. He didn't have to do that.
Sure.
I mean, so that's a degree of respect that you couldn't expect. But no, I just love this business so much. I love the art form. I love being able to do what I get to do. And there's always something, I don't care which artist it is, there's always something that we have in common that we're excited about.
Yeah.
And can talk about. And even though I have reclusive tendencies, when I get excited about something, I mean, in fact, I'm sure I overwhelm people at times because my enthusiasm just goes kaboom, and I can do that much. But my natural tendency is to just be very chill and just let everything be what it's going to be.
Right.
But man, you get me again. We'd start talking about favorite movies and whatnot, and man, you can't shut me up.
Well, the pinups is kind of like a really nice. It inspires me because for my channel, I'm trying to get all of the people who I respect and want to talk to about comics, and then eventually music and movies on this channel. Like Todd McFarlane was one of my idol, comic idols growing up, and he gave me 90 minutes of his time on this channel, and I'm excited to have him back. But like the pinups, I just want to talk to everybody. One of the people who kind of he's my favorite writer of all time across everything that you worked with that I'd love to get on the channel is Neil. And this is the Prez story in Sandman 54, but there's like a little bit more of a backstory to that, right? You were originally going to do a story for Sandman a bunch of years before that, and you didn't, but this ended up being the story, which is an amazing fucking story. It's so beautifully illustrated.
Yeah, he promised to give me one of his best, and he did. It's weird. This is a story I've told a lot, and I know I repeat some of these stories, but they're such milestones. They're crucial to my development. And so I'll try to do the quick version here. Again, Matt Wagner, one of the most supportive, best friends I've ever had, would turn people onto my work. And he turned Neil onto my work. And so Neil called me up, and this is like super early in my career. This is probably 90, 91, something like that. And in fact, you can, if anybody has the Rolling Stone magazine that had a huge article on comics, you know, hey kids, comics aren't for kids.
Right.
Or comics aren't for kids anymore, kids.
Yeah.
There was a full page ad in Rolling Stone with the first Sandman collection.
Right.
And so right in the zeitgeist. And so Neil's calling me. Now, to preface this, when I was still a broadcaster in Europe, I was in London, and the first comic book signing I ever went to was at Forbidden Planet. In London. And Neil was there with Dave McKean, and they were signing Black Orchid and the first issue of Sandman. Oh, wow. And this is the first time I heard the word Q, because I saw that they were going to be there. Just coincidentally, oh, cool, I'll get to meet these guys. You know, I bought all the magazines, the Comics Journal, Amazing Heroes, all that stuff. So, I had my finger on the pulse of what was coming out and everything. And Forbidden Planet, big, beautiful, multi-level store. So I'm just killing time. And then here they come and sit down, and I go up to the table, and then some guy goes, "Get in the queue." I'm like, the queue? What's a queue?
Yeah. Like, we don't know what that is. We're American.
Yeah. So, and I turn, and there's this giant line out the store and around the block. And I'm like, okay. And so I thought, okay, fine, whatever. And so got in the queue. And what's fun about being in a queue is the people you're in the queue with are also excited.
Yeah.
With comics and who you're about to meet and everything. Well, anyway, because I was running around, I think I was between hotel rooms or something. I had everything with me, and I brought my comic book work with me. And so I had pages. And when I got to the table, both were super nice to me. And Neil looked through my work and was very complimentary. And Dave kind of would lean over and look, but Dave was extra busy. This is a pet peeve of mine. Artists are kind of required to do more than writers at a signing.
Right. Little sketch and doodles and stuff.
But it was like, no more. No, I'm here to meet and greet. I want to give my full attention. Yeah. And have an experience. I don't want to have my head buried, in a pad. But so Dave's doing doodles and, on and looking over, but Neil gave it his full attention. So when he called me, he related this story, that he remembered me.
Wow.
And maybe because I was a Yank and there and whatnot, and an aspiring cartoonist, but he remembered this, and he was like, "I'd love for you to do Sandman." And at that point, it was like, "Dad,
I really made it now.
Like, get the new Rolling Stone magazine, Dad." I'm gonna do that. So I thought, this is it. I'm officially gonna launch. I had no clue how to get work with DC and Marvel.
Sure.
Keep in mind, Vertigo didn't exist then. Sandman was a DC book. Yeah. So I was like, great. And he says, call my my editor, or she'll call you. I ended up talking to Karen Berger, the editor, and she said, "We'll send you a sample script, do a couple pages, and we'll go from there." And I thought, oh, this is just a formality so that they can figure out what story would lend itself to my style. And so I got the script, and I thought, I'm going to show them, and I went above and beyond. I did over a weekend, I did 4 pages of pencils and a painting. I did a big Sandman on illustration board, and and this is when you had to send your original art in by FedEx. You know, they gave me the FedEx number, and so I did all this, sent it in, and thought, they're just going to be blown away. You know, DC is just, they won't be able to hold themselves back. And I waited, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then I thought, well, I should call and just at least make sure they got it. And I called, and Karen says, yeah, I got everything. Silence. And I went, well, when do I get started? And she's like, actually, we don't think you're quite ready yet. And talk about putting a pin in a balloon, man. I was so devastated by this, so distraught that I didn't know what to do. You know, I mean, I had my own personal work coming out.
Sure.
And Madman hadn't happened yet. So I was still doing, I would have been doing graphic music at this point. And then of course there was Jaguar Stories, which that's a whole other story. This is a book that allowed me to leave Europe and think that I was going to be professional. Company went chapter 11, Kimiko. But so it was like good stuff, bad stuff, good stuff, bad stuff. And Laura was the one bringing home the bacon. This was devastating, and I had to give a real good, long, hard think. And at this point I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go back to broadcasting. I'm going to go to the local stations, be an anchor man or something like that, you know, see what I can do, be a cub reporter, you know, whatever, you know. And, but then I thought, you know what, I just, you know what, maybe she's right. And this was the first time, and people that are creating, anybody, whether you're making a clay bowl or whatever, when you're creating, you feel like you're doing something special.
Of course.
And you tend to be your biggest fan, which is important. And you should be your biggest fan, but you should also be your harshest critic. You should be able to see anything that needs to be improved upon before anybody else does. And I wasn't able to do that at that point. And this was a muscle that I had to exercise. And from this moment on, I decided that the next thing I draw will be the best thing I've ever drawn. and I decided being hypercritical and going back to basics, really digging deep on figure drawing and faces and likenesses and also with cartooning, like how simple to make something, because you have to knock out illustration after illustration. So really finding these balances and nurturing. I really set out to just prove her wrong.
Yeah.
And my anger and frustration and disappointment turned into a drive, which opened up parts of me that I didn't know existed. And it was probably around then that my kids became school age, wanted to show their friends what their dad did. And everything I was doing was very odd and edgy and esoteric and sometimes very violent or graphic or just weird.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what, I didn't mind my kids seeing what I was doing and being able to explain it to them, but to just, throw it to another kid, I thought, I don't know. I don't feel comfortable about this. And then I realized, you know what? I want to do something that my kids would like, that I would have liked when I was their age.
Oh.
And so I got into that and pretty much put a costume on my favorite character at the time, which was Frank Einstein.
Right.
And met Kevin Eastman at WonderCon. He picked it up, and the rest is history for that. But it became very successful thanks to the support of people like Kevin Eastman and then Dennis Kitchen and Mike Richardson and of course Bob Schreck and Frank Miller and all the legend guys who invited me into their imprint, and
That was amazing.
giant spotlight on me. And so then Neil calls back at, and they're, hey, want to give it another go? And I was like, I would love to, but Karen needs to ask me.
Yeah.
And within minutes, she called up and said, been following your work, your development is very impressive, and would love it if you would do a Sandman. And then Neil approached me with this idea for Prez. Now, right at this same time, Vertigo was launched. So I was at the beginning of Vertigo with the Vertigo Jam anthology, where I did Shade with Peter Milligan, and the Geek, Brother Power the Geek one-shot special. Now, Brother Power the Geek was created by Joe Simon, who co-created Captain America with Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
But he did Brother Power the Geek. He also created Prez. And this was Joe Simon's effort to tap into the counterculture, to be hip. And I had just done Brother Power. And so when Neil approached me with Prez, I was like, I don't want to be the Joe Simon revisionist guy. And Neil was, I get that, but trust me. I have something really special for you. Please trust me. And so sure, okay. And he gave me one of the, these very celebrated, beautiful Sandman story.
Yeah, and Sandman, I tell people, for 20, 25 years since the first time I read it, it's my favorite comic book ever written. I've gone back and read it like 4 or 5 times. You've got some great overall, like mini arcs, but then you've got, like the Prez story, you got Charles Vest doing, some of the greatest single shot stories. But for anybody that hasn't read it, it's Sandman 54. And, if you've never read Sandman, come on, you're not doing comics right. I just wanted to go back to something real quick on the
a quick aside. It's got John Belushi in it.
It's right.
Got Wildcat in it.
He's still relevant, the story.
Yeah. And this script from Neil, he writes his scripts, at least this script, like a correspondence, like a letter. He's addressing me as he writes it. Like, hey, Michael, I think you might like this, or tell you what would you prefer? So it was Michael this, and what do you think? And it was so personal. I just loved it, and really changed the way that I approach script writing.
Yeah. He's
that's the short version of the story, kids.
Yeah. He's something else. I think about Neil's mind being, like a guy like Stephen Hawking. How did he exist without us realizing that he was an alien? How does Neil exist on this planet with such an imagination like that? And you play around with a lot of those things. I just want to ask before we keep going forward, the pinups, do you own all of those? Were those all given to you, like the physical original art?
Most of them. Yeah. Most of them. There's a few that I don't have or were promised to somebody else. Like Joe Kubert, for instance, promised his original to his family, one of his kids, one of his was daughter. I don't know, but I wasn't able to get that, but he gave me the color guide. So a copy of it that's watercolored beautifully. And so I have this beautiful little watercolor Joe Kubert piece.
Wow. I'm just, because obviously we're both big original art fans. We met at OAX, so that stuff interests me. Oh shit, where was I going? Oh yeah. So one of the other things that you are, known for, one of the things that you do well, and you are the official Batman 66 Adam West artist. I remember seeing that when I probably the movie, the Batman, the 66 Batman movie when I was a kid. It might've been on HBO, might've been on Nickelodeon or something, but was that something that you saw at a young age that just kind of stuck with you? Is that that's your first Batman, I assume?
Oh yeah. No, our childhood was all about Batman.
Yeah.
And then, so you would get 2-parters. You would get, here's this next adventure. They get stuck in a trap, and then you have to wait to the next episode to see how they get out of the trap.
Right.
Well, there would be stuff would come on TV that our parents wanted to watch that wouldn't let us see how they got out of the trap. So years went by without us knowing how they got out of certain things.
Oh no.
And, yeah. So until syndication rolled around, it was just torturous. And there was a 3-parter, and I think this is why I was an adult before I finally saw it. There's where Batman, the female character that was with the bad guys, and Robin are chained into a pool, and a giant clam comes over and starts eating Robin.
Yeah.
So the last thing you see before the episode ends is Robin's feet coming out of the clam. And, so I don't think this ran in syndication, or at least it never did where I got to see it. So until it came out on a bootleg.
Wow.
It was years before it finally came out on DVD or anything.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, they weren't putting that on home video.
It was between what was it, Fox and Warner Brothers, or anyway. So as an adult, to finally see how they escaped this giant clam. But anyway, like there's home movies of me and Lee running around in Batman costumes, because neither of us would be Robin. It was like,
of course not. Of course not. Nobody wants to be Robin.
But it was huge. And as kids, you'd go to the grocery store and there would be, do you remember it'd be like a piece of cardboard with a piece of film over it, and you'd get a hard pen and you could draw on it?
Oh yeah. Like I forget what it's called. I know what you're talking about. Like lead.
You erase the drawing and then you go back.
Shavings. It's like an Etch-a-Sketch, but easier to work instead of shaping it.
You're actually drawing on this piece. But there would be, that's an example of some of the merchandise. It would be Batman. It would be your official Batman drawing pad, and it would be, erasers and gliders, and so. In fact, I have a Batman bubble bath. I've got a hand puppet with a big rubber head.
Oh God!
Yeah, and signed by Adam West.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I know you met him a bunch of times, right?
I was his guy. Yeah. It was probably the biggest thrill of my whole career, because he was my second dad. I took Batman so seriously. When I was a kid, if he said, look both ways before crossing the street, or make sure you wear your seatbelt, stuff like that. I never wore a seatbelt, but not until it became a law. But Adam West, I took him so seriously. It was years before I realized that it was a big goof, the show. And then I, fell in love with it again on a whole other level. But just the big, bright, beautiful colors, and I just love
great cast too. It's so strange to me that at like 10, I knew who Julie Newmar was, and Cesar Romero, and Burgess Meredith, and I knew all these names, and I wasn't watching it but I must have, like you, it must have hit me so early. And then by the time Burton's Batman came out, like my parents took me and my brother to see that first day.
We were in Europe.
Were you? I think we were on vacation in LA. I definitely did not see that movie in New York, but that was a huge.
To give everybody an idea, we're in Europe, and you'd be in Paris, and there'd be a giant billboard with just the bat.
Yeah,
with the bat in it.
Yep.
This was worldwide phenomenon, and it was everywhere, and so thrilling. And I was already a big Tim Burton fan. Pee-wee's Big Adventure remains one of my all-time favorite movies. I love it.
Good.
And Beetlejuice is such a kick. When I heard that he was going to be the director, I was like, this is glorious. And I thought, well, of course, because of Beetlejuice, I thought, well, man, Alec Baldwin would be a perfect Bruce Wayne. And so when it was announced that it was Michael Keaton, I'm like, Beetlejuice is back. And so I was one of those people that were like, wait, what?
Right.
But I love Michael Keaton. And I love the idea that, he's a normal guy. He shouldn't be, and one of the criticisms I've gotten with my Batman is that he's too normal looking. It looks like a guy in a suit. He is a guy in a suit.
That's all he is.
He's using his money to do things, and part of it is creating this bat image. But Batman is huge for me, and so to be able to do what I've been doing with Mark Russell, it's such a dream come true, and we're having so much fun with it. I think
let's talk about it.
Oh yeah, I think this may very well be the best thing I've ever done. I can't wait for everybody to see where this goes, and there are so many surprises and twists and turns, and it is just alive and it crackles, man. I love this series so much, and I love working with Mark.
Yeah. So for anybody that,
no, I'm just we're doing a signing tomorrow at Cosmic Monkey Comics,
right, in Portland.
So I'm looking forward to being with him and his wife, and we're gonna hang out with Bendis. And
awesome.
No, that Portland crew it's fun.
Yeah. Well, okay. So just for anybody that doesn't know, Batman Dark Age came out this week. 6, is it going to be 6, 12? How many, 10 issues? 6.
It's
okay.
the same page count as Superman Space Age, but it's 6 issues instead of 3.
Absolutely stunning. And yeah, I read it.
I get to do more covers.
I read it this morning. I did not know what to think going in. Like I wasn't, I keep myself plot free. I just want to read it and did not know where it was going. It's very interesting. And I am excited. I don't know where it's going, and I don't want to know.
See nothing yet. It definitely has its own. I mean, if you had told me that someday I would get to do Batman's entire life, I really will get to do that. But of course, there are things that are askew from what people are used to seeing. For instance, Bruce isn't there when his parents get murdered. And I love Mark's explanation for that. It makes so much sense. So there's these little things that are just not quite what you expect or are used to, but they make sense.
Right,
they make so much sense. And it just really enriches everything. You ain't seen nothing yet, man. There is just, there's so much that I'm so excited for people to see.
Well,
how he becomes Batman, for instance, is just awesome.
Well, it feels like it's kind of like, you think it's going to go down this path and like 1 or 2 decisions, it goes this way. And I will say this also, I caught the Bob Dylan cameo in there.
Right on.
Spotted it right away. I'm like, oh, there's Bob Dylan walking out of his apartment.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Lenny Bruce is the comic.
I wasn't, and that's the thing. Like, you are so good at getting, putting the little cameos there, knowing who's who, and like reading Red Rocket 7. I'm like flipping back pages. I'm like, wait, was that who that's that? Okay, I know who that is. But with this book, it felt exactly the title, Dark Age, and so I'm really excited to see where it goes. And I know you mentioned you'll be in Portland, but this will air after the signing. But yeah, you're going to be at Cosmic Monkey, one of the greatest comic stores in a city that has the biggest choice of comic stores in the country. Like nothing compares to it.
So even though anybody listening to this won't hear it in time to be at Cosmic Monkey, I like the Cosmic Monkey plug, because if you're in Portland, go to Cosmic Monkey. You won't regret it. It's a great shop.
Yes. I recently did a video on the channel where I spent, it was like 2 days in Portland, and I just went to every shop that I could go to: Excalibur, Cosmic Monkey, Floating World. And, people were really stoked on that because some people weren't aware of how
Excalibur found a lot of treasures there. Floating World, fantastic. In fact, this is my Al Columbia shirt.
There you go.
Floating World is a huge supporter of Al Columbia. Did a big Al Columbia art show there once, and so they're great stuff.
And it is such a comics rich city. I just had Becky Cloonan on with Tula Lote, and Becky and Mike.
Mike, both wonderful.
Yeah, and they live in Portland, and Mafu just moved from Portland.
She lives in Portland?
Yeah, Becky and Michael Conrad are now in Portland. They moved from Texas.
Not Tula Lote.
No, Tula's in the UK. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
No, yeah. We did a cross continental stream recording which was
Yeah,
really
my
cool.
buddy Jamie Rich did a interview with Becky at Cosmic Monkey.
That's right. That's right. Does he still have that show on YouTube? No, I don't. It doesn't seem like
No,
he uploaded.
he's editor in chief at IDW now.
IDW. Okay, yeah. So he doesn't have time to do
Red
it.
Rocket 7 wouldn't exist without Jamie. So there's that. Oh, the reason I stepped off was we were talking the pinups, and Patrick McKeon is a cartoonist who I really, really wish anybody who might know him or tell him, please make more comics. He's so good. He did this.
Whoa.
He did this strip in Weasel, Dave Cooper comic.
Mm-hmm.
Dave Cooper, another fantastic artist. But anyway, it's this really cool thing where you have to figure out where to follow. There's at least 3-4 different things you have to follow. Just really ate that up. And when he, so there were the initial pinups for Madman, but then for the 20th anniversary special, which you have behind you, I got artists to also do one-page strips, so stories. Now, Dave Cooper did more than one page, but Pat McKeon, when he did his, I couldn't have been happier. He did a similar thing where you're following, room to room kind of thing. And so I couldn't, it was like if I had a special request, that's what I would have asked for. And I got it without him having to ask for it. But with the original art, and this is what made me think of it, he gave me the original art, which was scraps and scraps of pieces that he cut and put and redid. So I have multiple versions. For instance, if anybody looks at his strip in there, there's where the two panels and a giant woman is reaching into another panel. He did that like 3 or 4 different times, at least 4 if you're just looking at scribbles.
Right.
And he gave me everything.
That's amazing.
So I've got a whole wall dedicated to all of these all of these pieces that made up his strip. And
yeah, it is kind of crazy when you think about it. Like, do you ever just think about how many people you've collaborated with your own, your own property, and how many people you've lent, like Madman has showed up in Crossover, he showed up in Savage Dragon, he showed up, I feel like I've seen him in so many books that I'm just like, I kind of forget that he's yours and he's not this kind of universal character that everybody's just able to just bring into comics.
Yeah, that was my favorite thing about Legend, was crossing over with Hellboy or Big Guy and Rusty.
Right.
Frank Miller write the dialogue for his characters in my comic book, stuff like that. It's all so fun. I pinch myself. I just feel so fortunate that all these wonderful things have happened. I've been able to work with all these wonderful people, and I've been able to do work that I'm really proud of. Like to this day, almost every day, somebody says how much they love Silver Surfer that I did with Dan Slott.
Yeah.
Or somebody will say, "Oh, FF with Fraction, man, you guys really nailed it." And because it can be discouraging to do work, have it get released, and then it just, disappears in the ether. But to know that there's, like we were talking about favorite books.
Yeah.
And they'll remain, like Barry Windsor-Smith's Monster, that's not going to be forgotten anytime soon, and will be revisited constantly.
Yeah.
Love and Rockets. I'm constantly going through Love and Rockets, and or Dan Klaus's 8 Ball, or there's just everything that Darwin did. It's just these things just have infinite life. At least you hope they do. Batman Year One. It's just phenomenal work, and you just constantly want to revisit it. And that's just scratching the surface. There's just so. I've got Nexus here, and here's all Chris Ware's stuff, and
I mean, it's the beauty of the art form is that
I love Nick Darrington's stuff, and
You can never, you're never at a loss of creative things to have inspire you when you're reading comics. And talking about partnerships and collaborations. I mean, your greatest collaboration is, you and Laura. I mean, she, the two of you just do this thing together, and it's amazing that like all of the amazing work that she's colored of yours, that you've produced, and the life that's brought to it with that collaboration. And I know you look, you're married to her, you're endlessly talking about her, but is it just like something, it seems like something that you're never taking it for granted. The work collaboration and the fact that the two of you are soulmates is such a beautiful thing. It really is.
Yeah, she was gone for a week. She had to visit family. There were some current concerns, and it was the longest week of the past 10 years. No, there are no words. I love her so much and rely on her in so many different ways. And the fact that I truly believe she's the best colorist in comics. She has just this natural, at least for my sensibilities, it's everything that I want a color comic to look like. And the process that we've developed together that makes everything organic and it just so valuable to me. And she's easy on the eyes, so it's all good.
And she's a nerd too. It's like great. You talk about it, like I've watched you talk about how like you collect all this stuff, and you're like, it's not just me, it's her too. I mean, like it. When you think about it, like we all want to meet somebody that we share the same interests with, and when it goes as deep as like nerd and geek interests, like we are minuscule people. We look at the details, and we the little things, the way that Stormtrooper hits his head when they're opening up the door for the first time. Like we look at that, and that's the thing that sticks out. So it's when I hear you talk about her in interviews and meeting you two, it's just like, oh yeah, this is awesome. The two of you.
It extends to our children and children's children too. My dad and mom, I can't think of any music that we shared interests in. All of our kids love the same music that we love.
Yeah,
it's amazing, and they'll turn me on to stuff. Like for instance, my oldest son turned me on to Tame Impala.
Oh yeah, they're great.
So they're constantly looking for stuff that they think that I would like, and they tend to like everything that we do. So we can be in a car together and nobody's going to argue about what's being listened to and stuff like that. And we go to the movies together and look forward to the same things. So, and all of our kids are within walking distance too.
Right.
Which is fantastic. And
that's amazing.
Yeah. And when they did move away, that's why we left the coast, because our oldest son had our first grandson, and he moved from the coast to Vancouver.
Okay, Vancouver, yeah.
Across the river from Portland. And so because of that, very quickly we can't stand this. And so we leased a place downtown Portland. If anybody is familiar with Pal's Books.
Oh yeah.
Like the world's biggest bookstore.
It's a mecca.
Yeah. So we lived 5 blocks from Pal's.
Okay.
And then we were able to do that. And then when our other children started having children, somehow we managed to get everybody back to Eugene. But now our second son, so I take it back. One of our second son, he just bought his first house about 20 minutes south of us.
Okay.
So now they aren't within walking distance, but everybody else still is.
Yeah, and it's just a short drive. Eugene's a really nice town. There's some good comic stores there, and then there's the Albany Antique Mall. I like that spot.
Yeah.
So in music, let's talk about this real quick, because I don't think I've heard you talk about this too much. You did the cover for the Illustrated Al. Now, I just had Chip Zdarsky on the channel, and we were talking about comedic influences. And if I didn't grow up with Weird Al, I wouldn't be the goofball that I am. And I'm so happy that I existed in the time where he was at like the height of his powers, because my parents took me to see the Monkees with Weird Al opening at Jones Beach in
Wow.
August of '87, and like that's where I get my humor from. Were you a fan of his? In the '80s.
I miss the original MTV so much.
Yes,
it was like having the radio on, but you could turn and
you could see. Cool. Yeah.
With him, you can hear the songs and they're funny in and of themselves, but then the videos just enhance them beyond, and always a kick. And no, he's great. And I loved the movie with Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh yeah, the Al story. Yeah, the Weird Al story.
Yeah, that's a blast too. But he seems like a super cool guy. I haven't met him, but
yeah, I met him a couple of times. Very, very nice.
But the Monkees, yeah, baby. I mean, I did their Christmas album cover, and so because they were the same thing. It was like when we would come home from school, in syndication, you'd get Batman, Star Trek, the Monkees, Partridge, Land of the Giants, Wild Wild West. You would cycle and figure, okay, which one to watch, but. They were just very much part of my childhood, and our cousin who came to live with us, she had the Monkees albums.
Oh wow!
They should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I call it the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame because of all of the artists that they've neglected to induct while they were still alive that were eligible. It's a crime, and it's crushing. And that the Monkees in 1967 they outsold the Beatles and the Stones.
That's right. They were huge.
The year of Sgt. Pepper, they outsold the Beatles.
That's crazy.
And because whoever makes these decisions don't like them or don't think they're legitimate musicians, which they've proven they are.
Right.
It's a crime. And so I don't like stuff like that. It's upsetting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
so I don't need somebody to tell me who deserves to be in a Hall of Fame. I'll enjoy who I want to enjoy.
Exactly. And the Hall of Fame is just, it's just I don't know what even to call it, a sham, but because, how do you determine who's a Hall of Famer and who's not? Like, we all know the bands that are great, that we love, the bands that have the biggest impact on society are the ones that, like the Beatles, we all know.
Well, it's so arbitrary and thoughtless and cruel. It's actually cruel. For instance, one of the more recent inductees was Deep Purple.
Yeah.
In fact, every year if you watch the ceremony, always worth watching because you get
great performances
coming out and interacting and performing together.
Yeah.
Cheap Trick was another one they waited way beyond when they were eligible. And some bands will get inducted the first year they're eligible, like Green Day. Great. But what about the other ones that should have been inducted on the first day they're eligible? But the one that really blew me away was Deep Purple because so many of them were dead. And recently, like if you could have just inducted them a year or two earlier, they all could have celebrated together. Now this, on the strength of Smoke on the Water. What's the first song when you pick up a guitar? What's the first song you play? And they weren't inducted when they were first eligible. It's stuff like that. Like that's the only example I need to give for the argument about how crass and stupid and ignorant the process is. The Go-Go's were just inducted a year or two ago.
Wow.
They've been eligible since 2000.
Yeah, I was going to say somewhere like 20 years ago.
An all-girl band that destroyed the charts. They were huge.
Yeah,
so
they were.
Success, a cultural success, icons beyond, and it took you this long to acknowledge them. It's ridiculous. So it's such a love-hate thing, and
I agree with you because I don't care that they're getting in. Like I wanted to see Letterman induct Pearl Jam. Like that to me is a moment, or whenever, Trent inducted The Cure, which that took way too long. The Cure was only inducted like 4 years ago or something like that.
It's like it's very arbitrary. Like, why them but not them?
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. And
Yeah.
but when you see the people come up pissed when they accept the award, and like, I didn't even want to come.
Yeah. Well,
They'll say, Peter Cetera of Chicago didn't show up.
yeah.
Todd Rundgren, the heroic, because they showed, and I'll give the show credit for this, the ceremony, because they inducted Todd Rundgren into the Hall of Fame, and they showed a clip of him at a graduation where he's speaking to the graduating class, and he's wearing the whatnot, and he says, as far as the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame, if ever inducted, I will not accept, or I will not appear, I will not. And he just completely gave the middle finger to it, but they showed him rejecting it, which I thought was really cool.
Kind of funny. I mean,
so my appreciation, respect for Todd Rundgren just went pow.
And only because he was the nicest guy and wanted to make the political statement. Morello was the only person from Rage Against the Machine that showed up last year, because none of them wanted to have anything to do with it. But because Morello's like the face of that band these days, and he's always going to say something, his activist brain is like, this will give me a good chance to mention this, and this at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Love him. And just let me throw a little brag in here. He opened for my band, The Gear.
Oh shit! No, really?
Yeah, at Trickster, he performed before us. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was crazy awesome. Yeah.
Was he as Morello or the Night Watchman?
Morello.
Okay, yeah. I've seen him solo a bunch of times, and he's great. I mean, that band means so much to me because, like, as their debut album comes out in '92, so I'm 13, and to hear the power and the anger and all this interesting stuff that Zach is going off about with this style of music that I'd never heard before, it was mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, one of the best shows I ever saw was them opening for U2 here locally at
wow.
And this was great because there's bike trails from our house to Watson Stadium. So we took all of our kids. We all rode our bikes.
Oh, that's so cool.
And when they played, of course, it was still daytime. This is the Lemon Tour. U2 had a big lemon on the stage.
Maybe was it Zooropa? No.
All I remember was it was lemon. Lemon on the stage. So I can't remember what album that was, but Rage Against the Machine opened for them, and they just blew everybody away. It was so fantastic.
Yeah, I saw them when Evil Empire came out. I saw, my cousin took me to see them, and I was up against the barricade, and like, at 15, I still looked like I was 12, and I had this like bruise across my ribs from getting pushed, but it was the greatest thing. It was like, this is the power of music. And I know you understand that so much. It is, it's such a beautiful thing. Was Bowie like your first musical love?
Oh, it would have been the Beatles and the Monkees. For sure, that because they were on TV, know? And so before I ever owned any records or anything, you knew who they were. And like I said, my cousin who came to live with us, she had this amazing record collection. But my introduction to Bowie was going to Payless Drugstore, where I got my comics. And so there's the spinner rack for comics, and then there's a magazine rack. And on the magazine rack were a bunch of rock and roll magazines, including Cream magazine. David Bowie and Angela, his then wife, dressed up all Ziggy with all they looked like they were aliens. And so that's what drew my eye to it. Grabbed the magazine, looked at it. The opening poster was the Diamond Dogs album cover, uncensored.
Oh, wow.
And, so I'm like, what is this? And the Guy Pilliard was the artist, and a book had just come out called Rock Dreams, where Guy Pilliard drew these beautiful, lush paintings of all these different rock and roll icons. And so all this imagery was flowing over me. So there's an artist that inspired me. He also did the album cover for the Rolling Stones. It's Only Rock and Roll.
Okay.
I bought the magazine, and I'm reading it, and on my way home, I go past Ricketts music store, go inside, and they had the Rebel 45. So Diamond Dogs was just coming out.
Right.
And reading about him and the description of his music and sci-fi oriented and that kind of stuff, I just had to get it. So I got the 45, took it home, and the single version is it's got more production to it than the album version. And the flip side was Lady Grinning Soul, which is a very sexy song. And I'm just ready to hit puberty. Anyway, I started spending my paper route money on albums.
Yeah.
And bought all the Bowie stuff. So got Diamond Dogs, blew me away. Still, it's always in my top 3 Bowie albums, no matter what my mood is. But then went backwards. So I'm getting Pinups and Ziggy and Man Who Sold the World and Aladdin Sane and Space Oddity. So I had this crash course, and no artist, with the possible exception of the Beatles, has ever put more imagery in my head. Beatles and Bowie, they just fill my brain.
Yeah.
And I've just been crazy nuts for it ever since.
I don't know where you put this in your life's work so far, but to me, this is exactly what you just said in the comic book. The imagery of the Beatles, Bowie, and all the music you love, but it's almost what if Mike Allred came from space? That's how I look at this book, because
I feel like I am from space.
But it's, Red Rocket 7. So I just read it for the first time, and just the piles of books that I have to read are endless. But I enjoyed it so much, and I recognized all the things that you put in there. Cobain and Vedder are on like the first couple pages, and I see all these people that I know, and it's just. Is this, would you consider this semi-biographical, in a way?
It definitely, in many ways, Yeah.
How long did you work on it?
We're all from outer space, by the way. I would like to point that out. I think we all tend to forget that we're on this spinning rock. That's void.
Yeah.
That it's impossible to exist, but it does. And here we are talking about comic books.
Yeah.
But that I just spilled everything I loved into that book. And I wish I was better when I was doing it. There's so much it's one of the books I'm probably most critical of, because I look at it and I go, oh, I should have done this like this. And I should have, So it means so much to me. The whole project. That and my band, the movie, it was I can't believe that we took such a big bite and chewed it all. It's all there.
It's one of those things that I think, if it ever gets maybe reprinted in a new format and re-released, it's going to touch a lot of people. It's even bookended with introduction and an outro from Robert Rodriguez and Gerard Way. So I look at this book as like, this book speaks to me. And there's, I obviously, being younger, my introduction to Bowie is pretty much everybody my age is Labyrinth. Labyrinth is, I probably heard his music, but knowing who David Bowie was in 1986 is because he's in this amazing Jim Henson movie. Yeah. And, but it is kind of strange, like how much of an impact he, even, before his death, but while he was still alive, his impact just went everywhere. There is nobody that hasn't been touched by something that he did in some way, shape, or form.
I think he had the most incredible life as an artist, probably the most interesting, the most diverse. So he just squeezed so much into 69 years. It is phenomenal. And all of the, man, I can just take an era and get all excited about just 1 year in his life.
Sure.
And with every single year since 1970. Since 1969, I can get excited about something that he did in every year of his life from 1969 on. Incredible. Man Who Fell to Earth. I can watch that movie over and over again. Just watched Fire Walk with Me with my oldest, and then watched The Missing Pieces, which is like 2 hours of stuff that didn't make it into the theatrical version. And in that is a section that was why they didn't put it in. It's all the Bowie stuff, the Philip Bowie stuff, where you see him teleport, and it's
I'm gonna have to watch.
It's the best of anything in Fire Walk with Me. So when you see him in Fire Walk with Me, where he appears in the FBI office, and Dale Cooper and David Lynch is there, and Miguel Ferrer, and it's mysterious how he appears. He's not on camera. He is on camera, and then he's like, he's gone. Yeah. Well, what happens is when you're in The Missing Pieces, you see that he's in South America or something at a hotel, at a resort. And you see him checking in and whatnot. And then he's in the FBI office. And then when he disappears, you see him, there's a burst, and he's on a staircase in the hotel, and he's screaming because he's in pain. And there's the back wall is like, there's a burn mark, and there's smoke, just singed everything around him. And then the porter or whoever, he turns to him and he's like holding his pants, like, I poop in my pants, Mr. Jeff.
I'm gonna have to watch this now because I've never seen that.
If I ever have the time and technology that will be edited into my personal version of Fire Walk with Me. But when he just shows up and he's like, he's just screaming in pain, because this teleportation just is so painful for him.
I remember when the new season came out, the last season, I forget if it has a name, but the season 3, and people were kind of, what was it?
The Return.
Yeah, The Return. I remember
Return.
People were theorizing that disembodied voice that was going throughout the season. And it's a little foggy to me, but people were thinking that maybe Lynch had shot stuff with Bowie before Bowie passed away, but obviously that wasn't the case. And no,
but he did ask Bowie if he could do that, if he could have somebody try to sound like him.
Yeah. What a wild season that was. And yeah, with Bowie, like you know, I can attest to what you were saying, because for me, and I'm pissed that the show got canceled. I was supposed to go see Bowie with 9 Inch Nails at Nassau Coliseum, or maybe it was the Garden, and it was one of the shows that they canceled. But that's another piece of like my loving of Bowie, is when he and Trent, got connected and did I'm Afraid of Americans and toured together.
Laura did get to see that show in Portland.
Oh, wow.
I had to go to LA to do a signing with Matt Groening at Golden Apple Comics.
Well, I mean, it could be worse.
So I'm like, I mean, Matt Groening is such a sweet guy and always been amazingly supportive. And this is by far the most successful signing I've ever been a part of. I was with the first Treehouse of Horror.
Yeah.
So I'm signing with Matt Groening, and we're in Hollywood, and there are lines out the block.
Wow.
Nobody had a clue who I was.
All right. I mean, Matt Groening, it's almost like people had tunnel vision anyway, even if they knew who you were. It's like, he created The Simpsons.
Yeah. And Futurama.
Yeah, that's right.
Love
And he's
Futurama.
Oregonian, it's all based in Oregon. And I've been to Springfield, Oregon before. Awesome that there's all those murals there. Everywhere you go, there's a mural of the
I live in Shelbyville. That's what Eugene is.
That's hilarious. I never thought of it.
Springfield, which is right next to us, just like on the show, Shelbyville and Springfield. And there are murals on big Simpson murals on buildings and whatnot. It's people really get into the whole Simpson connection with it is the Springfield.
Yeah.
And then of course, Portland, a lot of the Simpsons characters were named after streets.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
And there's a bar in Portland that they claim is the bar that was Moe's. I mean, yeah, yeah. Simpsons is something that talk about for hours also, because it's now part of American life. Like it's world life, but it's part of it's been around 40 years now, maybe a little bit more.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Did you see Bill Morrison at OAX?
I did, and we were talking about getting him on the channel, but I think he got a little too busy. But I'm going to reach back out to him. He's such a great guy too. Oh,
we love him. He's a huge Bowie fan, and but we hung out with him at Moe's at Universal Studios.
Oh, there you go. And he's got a lot of I mean, they have some original artwork that he did up there, right? At the Moe's.
Oh, if they did, I didn't notice it.
I think I heard him talking about it.
I thought it was funny that here we are in Moe's, and I just wanted to get up on a table and go, "Hey, everybody! This guy right here has probably drawn more iconic Simpson pieces than anybody on the planet."
Yes. Oh my God, it is pretty impressive that how long Bongo and that book specifically went on for. The print runs probably dwindled down at some point, but they were still going strong into the 2000s.
Yeah, but probably the most famous piece is that giant piece with dozens and dozens of Simpson characters.
I think I know.
It's a big thing.
Panoramic.
You just see all the characters built.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think it was a poster. I think they made it into an actual.
It's a mural at Universal Studios.
Wow.
Yeah, and so that alone, it's like, hey, everybody, this guy did that.
So one of the questions I did want to ask, because obviously you're a giant Star Wars fan, have you ever had the chance, like you've done some covers before, but is there a Star Wars story that's been tooling around in your head that you're waiting to do? Like
it's the biggest thing on my wish list. Yeah. Do. And I've done a lot of Star Wars stuff, a lot of cards, a lot of covers. Right.
The Topps Galaxy stuff.
There was a magazine that I illustrated. They had the script of the radio show in the magazine, and I did the illustrations, which includes Luke looking up at the battle,
Yeah.
cut out of the film. So I was able to illustrate that. But I want to do a big epic story, and would really love to sink my teeth into something like that at some point.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Disney's listening, Marvel, let's get Mike and Laura on a story, because I know Star Wars fans, we're a weird bunch. There's the ones that really kind of take. I mean, look, I got Jar Jar over my shoulder here. I love Jar Jar, but I there's nothing Star Wars that I can't take something positive out of. Like I can find enjoyment in even the like the movie Solo wasn't my favorite thing, but I still enjoy parts of it. And so I think I would love to see you do a Star Wars story, but in the recent years, the TV shows, the movies and stuff, what I know Mando, you made your own Beskar armor. What else have you and Laura found out that you love of the new Star Wars stuff?
Oh, Mandalorian is my favorite thing since the original 1977 movie. I love it so much, and I'm a lover, not a hater. When people criticize this stuff and get all angry about any pop culture thing, I'm always a half glass full guy, and I'm always able to find stuff that I love about it. And I'm very capable of letting things spill over me. For instance, Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
It was miraculous that happened. We waited for new Star Wars stuff, and it came out. We were there the first showing, the midnight showing before, and I was to be in that galaxy far, far away again. I was in heaven.
Yeah.
And just ate it up. And then as the weeks followed and started hearing the whiners, the people that, and just nitpicking it. And it was like, can't you allow yourself to have fun?
Yes.
Just relax and have fun. And then it was like that with the, episode 2 and episode 3, I'm very good at ignoring the haters.
Yeah.
And over time, an appreciation has grown for those. So initially, there's kind of this, and I saw an interview with Ewan McGregor lately, who was like, when we did it, everybody was treating us like we, killed their grandma.
I know.
But now he went to Star Wars Celebration and stuff, is like, the love that I'm getting for this now is incredible. And it was like, well, it's a little late,
time.
but thank goodness.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same with Hayden. Hayden's getting this renaissance of love, and everybody, destroyed him when when those movies were done.
Or the poor kid that played Anakin in the first film.
Jake Lloyd. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know why people have to lean into cruelty like that. I don't understand it. I really don't. It's so easy to enjoy things instead of being upset about things all the time. I got a little negative with the Rock and Roll Hall of Shame.
Yeah,
but it's a protective thing.
You're
because
standing up to the artists.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing the music. They are. This entity that's supposed to celebrate this stuff is creating a tier system.
Yeah.
This is better than this. It's like, no. No, so that's so when I'm in protective mode, I can get negative. But in general, I really just I want to exercise the love muscle. I want to see the good in things. I want to see the positive things. It's a miracle that anybody ever makes anything, whether they make an album or a movie or a comic book, that they put the effort in it and finished it. I've seen so many people start stuff and not finish it.
Yeah, I'm guilty of it.
The first thing is like, good job, you finished it. Good job. And then you look for the stuff that you can pull from it that you enjoy. And, I would just rather spend my life doing that than crapping on things.
Well,
so to see the Ahsoka series and everything, give Hayden Christensen this new
Ahsoka was so good. Like I had not familiarized with myself with the Rebels series, and then I watched it before, like a couple months before Ahsoka came out, and I was ready for Ahsoka. And I mean, first of all, Rosario Dawson does not do wrong ever. There's no point in her career where I'm just like, no. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who plays Hera, is Ewan McGregor's wife.
Yeah, and she's amazing. I mean, I've had a crush on her since Scott Pilgrim.
Oh yeah. For me, it was Death Proof.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So and then it was like, hey, watch Scott Pilgrim, which by the way was my favorite movie that entire year. Oh. And so it was really great that she was in Tarantino's Death Proof, and I've enjoyed everything she's done since, and Fargo and that Cloverfield movie. That
10 Cloverfield Lane she was great.
Yeah, she's always cool.
Yeah,
but anyway, there's just so much room to enjoy this stuff. I don't know why people want to just get angry about it, or like, if I don't like something, I just don't watch it. I just don't listen to it. I just don't.
You just move on. You move on.
Yeah, there's so much more that I want to bring in. So that's what I will look at. That's what I'll look for, and then that's what I'll spend my time doing. Is like, hey, everybody, look at this.
Sure.
And like, everybody, I hate this. This sucks. This is awful. What a waste of time.
It is. And it's unfortunate, in the space that I'm in the YouTube space and doing podcasting and all this stuff, the hate sells, and I try not to. I'm humorous. I can be sarcastic, but I love what I love, and I don't sit there and shit on stuff. But I think, it's funny. People use the phrase nostalgia is a hell of a drug, right? And when you think about it, if you try to like do too much of it, and you're just going for the nostalgia factor instead of like the true love for it, you're going to act like unfortunately, you're going to act like an addict. And when you rip an addict away from the thing that they loved and you change it, then the brain chemistry changes and you go into hate. And so people, and it's unfortunate in comics these days more than I think it's ever been. And Mike, you probably can attest to this. It's like, people are like, oh, this character was supposed to be this. This is who I loved when I was a kid. Well, everything changes. People change. Yeah. And so if your characters aren't going to change, then there's no point. There's no point if there's no evolution to your movies or your characters or whatever, your music, So I think that's what spurns on the hate, because people naturally are afraid of change, or they're resistant to change. And, if you embrace it, and you're, like I've seen it in your work, you change, you've embraced the change, and in the things you love, the pop culture stuff, you embrace the change, then you're never at a loss for love with it.
Yeah. But, Fantastic Four number 48 will always be there.
Sure.
If you like what Fantastic Four is doing now, what you loved is still there. Madman Adventures number 1 will always be there.
Right.
So if something with Madman that I don't like this, you can still look at what you liked.
Sure.
Well, that's the best thing about pop culture and nostalgia. You can tap back into that. Now, of course, your life experiences will put a different spin on this thing.
Yeah.
But more times than not, you can remember why that impacted on you, why you liked it. And that's what I love about pop culture, is it's the best signpost. If you think of when I first heard this song, when I first watched this movie, it then brings back the memories of my life, what was happening in my life, and what was important to me at that time. And then when you revisit stuff, you gain a new appreciation for it, or maybe you see that it's not as good as you thought it was, but you still like the experience it first gave you. So that it just makes existence interesting and enjoyable, and which I prefer to the alternative.
Sure. I do want to wrap it up. I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but just a kind of a you've lived in the Northwest pretty much your whole life, with the exception of when you were in Germany and Europe. Were you going to see like the early Seattle scene? Were you seeing some of those bands in the Northwest, or did you get to see Elliott Smith when he was pretty much playing every small place in Oregon when he was rising?
But my best buddy at this radio station I worked at, Kevin Welch, ended up working for the Wilson sisters at Bad Animal Studios, and everybody went through there.
Yeah.
So I lived it through him. So he met everybody, all of Pearl Jam, all of Nirvana, all of your band in Seattle at the time. Everybody went through Bad Animal Studios. Alice in Chains and
Soundgarden.
Soundgarden. Oh my gosh, break my heart.
Yeah.
But yeah, Kevin got to just rub shoulders with all of those guys, and so I always loved hearing about them and how everybody was really cool, and everybody loves Dave Grohl. He's
still the best.
Yeah, but see that these are the people I look to. Like that's how you should live life.
Sure.
Just there's so much to enjoy, so much to share. And, so that attitude, I think, either way, negativity is contagious, but so is positivity.
Yeah.
And, you can, sometimes it's good to get dark, because you want that contrast, you want to know that, but as long as you can pull out of it, it's a healthy thing, to experience all the facets of human experience. But then just pulling back again to pop culture, there's just so much to talk about and to be influenced by and inspired by, and it's the best. I just love being able to find out what people's favorite music are and their favorite movies, because then you kind of instantly know, well, then you'll like this.
Yeah.
Then you might want to see this.
I mean, the shared experience of being human, it's a great thing. And that's one of the things why I wanted to do this channel. I wanted to be able to have conversations with people and, then with that recommend things and like explore the things that we love. Like, I talk about the single greatest movie of all time, in my opinion. And also what I'd like to say is fact is Jaws. Find me a movie that is everything you want it without needing to ever explore anything further in this, in a sequel or whatever. And there's a lot of people that I know that are my age or a little bit younger that have never seen that movie. I've seen it 100 times.
Yeah. No, I have a list of perfect films. What I
Yeah.
will review are perfect films,
Sure.
and that's one of them.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
It is.
Every single minute is interesting. The characters are always interesting. The situation is interesting. The frustration of the sheriff trying to like, come on.
Yeah.
And then of course the interaction of the three on the boat, leading up to it. It's a perfect film. And anybody that hasn't seen it should just stop what they're doing and
Shut
watch.
this off. Yeah. Like, I mean,
I've got a whole list of movies like that.
I would love to get your list, just in case there's something I haven't seen. Did you see Godzilla -1?
No. And by the time I got wind of all of the praise, it wasn't in theaters anymore. So I'm waiting for it to pop up somewhere. But I've heard, in fact, the one time we went to see The Boy and the Heron, and Godzilla -1 was in the theater next door. It was like you could just hear it.
Yeah.
But at that point, it was like, because I was watching Monarch at the time.
Yeah.
My buddy Matt Fraction is a showrunner on that.
That's right. That's right. It's great. I enjoyed it.
And also Kurt Russell, he's like my guy. He's in my life every step of my life. He was doing something. Whether he was Jungle Boy and Gilligan's Island, or he was on every TV show.
That's right. And then
he never stopped working. He was one of the few people that transitioned from little kid. His first movie, he kicks Elvis Presley in the shin. And,
I think I knew about that.
Yeah, it's in Seattle. They're at the World's Fair, and he kicks Elvis in the shin. But you never went away. He didn't have that awkward thing. He went into the teenage stuff, the Disney stuff.
And then he goes into John Carpenter's world.
John Carpenter did a TV movie where Kurt Russell played Elvis. And then, of course, Snake Plissken and The Thing.
Yeah.
Another perfect movie.
Yes, 100%.
So anyway, why did that come up?
Godzilla, you said you were watching The Boy and the Heron.
Godzilla.
And Monarch.
It's on my in fact, Fraction was just at a local store, Books with Pictures, just had a grand opening. They moved to this really great space.
Oh, wow.
Fraction was there and Greg Ruck was there. And one of the first things, have you seen Godzilla -1? I want to. And then at the Academy Awards, because it has a crazy low budget, and it won the Best Special Effect Award over all of these multi-zillion-dollar movies. So
well deserved.
And then I was watching something, and somebody said that it was flat out the best Godzilla movie ever. Just period.
100%. And to that, I saw it 3 times. I saw it in the IMAX in Seattle, saw it once in Tacoma. I took my parents to see it after OAX. I went to my parents in Florida, and I took my parents to see it in black and white after OAX. And not just the best Godzilla movie, is a love letter to Jaws. And if you keep that in your head while you're watching that movie, you're going to notice all of the little things that are just nods to Jaws throughout the entire movie.
Okay. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to see if it's on iTunes, because
I don't think it's available yet. Apparently the Japanese market is very slow to move their movies to home viewing. They're talking maybe not even a Blu-ray release until the summer.
Well, I'm super excited to see it. So I'm kicking myself for missing it when it was in theaters.
Well, it'll probably get another release eventually down the line. But before we get going, just want to give another plug. Batman Dark Age, the first issue is out now. Second issue is coming out next month. And then obviously for the rest of the 6 issues, it'll be out monthly. Anything else you have that you could talk about that's coming out? Maybe a new Madman or Atomics or anything like that?
I'm always working on Madman. It's a free time project. I'm also doing another music biography with my best bud, Ben Saunders, Professor Ben Saunders.
Yeah.
Look him up, Google him. He's curated the best original art exhibits of anybody ever.
I went to that one in Portland twice. I couldn't get enough of it. Unreal.
Yeah, he's such a cool guy, and we sing together and play together. And I'm gonna be with him tonight, actually. But we're doing something. I can't say what it is yet, but I'm a third of the way through. And Laura, completely, like, I've hand lettered it. like a hand letter Bowie, and Laura has it colored. So a third of it is completely done, completely done. But again, it's a spare time thing. Because it doesn't have a hard deadline, and do have a hard deadline, which involve other people, like have to be of the top consideration. So that would mean that the deadlines for Batman priority, and we're at the tail end of that now, and so then I'll move back to that. But then also, Mark and I have another thing planned. We're talking trilogy, but now we're moving beyond trilogy with our plans, and everybody is at DC is loving everything we've done, and say they're excited about everything we're wanting to do. So I might be playing in this sandbox for a while.
Awesome. Oh, all right. Well, apparently you're getting beamed out. All right. And then, so I'll put your socials links below. I know you're on Instagram and stuff. I don't know. Well, it definitely wasn't in your head. I heard. So, and then I'll mention, Simon, your art rep, godsuperpowers.com. There's stuff up there, originals for sale. And I know you don't do a lot of conventions, but I'm assuming and I'm hoping you will be at OAX next year.
Oh, it was so much fun. I love that show. Unless deadlines are crushing me, it's something that my thing. There's so many things I want to do, like doing a Conan series is on my wish list. So let's say, for instance, it's coming up, yeah, sure, and then it's like, hey, here's this, but we have to, then all of a sudden, nope, can't go anywhere.
That's
the kind of thing that trips me up, because first and foremost, I just want to make as many comics as possible. I love doing it so.
Sure. Yeah. And you did conventions for so many years. It's not like you you're at that point in your career where like conventions are like, I don't really, but if OAX is a different.
We did every show there was the first 10 years. We did everything. and here's the thing. I love going to shows because where else do you get to meet the people that are supporting your work? And signing a book is our way of saying thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you.
Sure.
But it does halt productivity. Productivity comes to a screeching halt. So we have to kind of think of these appearances as vacations. We have to use it as a break. And I don't find it grueling to be at a show. I enjoy it. I love the interaction. I love that. And in the case of OAX, Disney World and Universal Studios, it's
right
a big
there.
Yeah. So that's a huge plus, but love that show, and I really want to see them build it up. I think that's what I love about comic book shows. That's what the first ones we went to were like. We really get to spend more time with your peers, your fellow creators, and the folks that support your work. And there's not a lot of other distractions with wonky stuff and, people selling,
Funko Pops and stuff like that. Yeah. Well, it felt like, I used to go to the Javits Center when I was a kid in the 90s, and that was the biggest show in New York. But I used to go to Big Apple Con. I used to go to all the smaller cons too. And that's what OAX felt like. You didn't have to raise your voice. You could talk and have conversations without, like having somebody standing on top of you, it was really, really comfortable. And it was a museum. We got to see House of Secrets 92. The original cover was there.
Oh, the New Gods with Orion and Light Ray coming at you. I mean, we can't believe all these iconic pieces. And then, of course, all of the artists, you're just surrounded by original art. You're seeing the one-of-a-kind pieces that go into these comic books we love so much. It's all right there, easy. And you go here. Then you go. Of course, you can do that at any show. But this is like Artist Alley, huge, and every artist is one of your favorite artists.
It was impressive. But all right, well, I super appreciate this all the time, and the conversation was great. I feel like I don't know how we talked for 2 hours. It felt like a half hour. But
wanting to reach into your box and
wait, high five you. High five. But yeah, I'd love to have you back on. And I was thinking about maybe having you and Laura and Jimmy and Amanda on at the same time. That could be a lot of fun. But all right. Well, thank you so much. And
you got my Batman pop art portrait there.
Oh, right there.
Amanda and Jimmy got my giant madman painting.
I know. And Bill got the other one, right? He got the surfer. Yeah. I was the only opportunity I had. I don't know if you're going to be doing those again for OAX, but we'll see. We will see.
I will, but not that big.
Yeah.
Everybody kept telling me I would have bid on it, but it was so huge. I was worried about getting it back. I was like, well, whatever.
Yeah, I ended up winning John Wayshak's Vengeance painting because he's a buddy of mine. And then I bought so much stuff at OAX and I was not upset about anything that I bought. I was so happy. Well, thanks for listening. If you don't know Mike's work, well, I really ask you to seek some of it out now. Red Rocket 7's a great one if you're a music fan. And like I said, Dark Age is out now. You can pick up Superman Space Age in its entirety, Madman, Atomics, X-Force, all of it. Before we get going, just want to make another ask, as I usually do. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you scroll up all the way, and there's a star rating you can give. If you think I'm good enough, give me 5 stars. If not, or fine, 4. But don't give me any less. I have an ego here to protect. And then on Apple, you can leave a actual review with words, like a sentence like Dave is great, all hail Dave, whatever it is you feel like saying. And then if you're listening to this on YouTube, just hit the like button, subscribe, whatever you need to do. I don't promote this podcast too much except in my YouTube shows and then talking live on channels and stuff. Eventually I'll get to it. I just don't have the time. So any help would be greatly appreciated. Don't forget, keep your head up, enjoy your day, and I'll see you next week on Show. This is how I put all over the volume and put a snag. Oh, girl.